Well, Richard's blessings to you all, and congratulations to those who stayed with us diligently now for over 35 weeks. This is now session 2 out of 3 about the New World Order. Now, in session 1, we looked at the person of Nimrod, who is also known as Osiris and Gilgamesh. He has at least a dozen other names, if we were to seek it out. Having established personal details about Nimrod, we have tried to outline his personal objectives for the Tower of Babel. We pointed out that the Illuminati has been the dominant mystery school in these latter days to carry forward the ancient vision of Nimrod. The only real difference we showed was that Nimrod probably wished to replace Jehovah with himself as God, while the Illuminati wished to replace Jehovah with an image of either Lucifer or of the enlightened man. We were reminded about Albert Pike's vision. Pike was a 33rd degree Mason in the Scottish Rite and leader of World Freemasonry, who also led the Illuminati in America early in the 20th century. It was Pike who formulated the plan for 3 world wars to break down Western society and prepare the world for a world order worshipping Lucifer. And perhaps he was thinking that just as the world was destroyed in the flood of Noah, and then shortly afterwards came the new empire under Nimrod, maybe that's what's needed again to bring about that new world order. The world has to go through a kind of social disaster and destruction, similar in a way to the flood, so that the new society can emerge without hindrance. Anyway, tonight we look a little bit more closely at the details given, albeit symbolically, in Revelation 13, such as the second beast, which is, we look at it as a false priesthood for a false Messiah, and the image of the beast. We look at how we're going to understand the second beast as it attempts to establish a Luciferian world order, and what it means for the mark of the beast to be imposed, and we look at the idea of humanism as encapsulated in the number 666. There are probably a few things you'll hear tonight that will shock you, so be prepared. From the occult side, there's the issue of the pedigree of the Antichrist, whose 13 bloodlines are even now being preserved. Prince Leonello and Princess Desta, a 14th century Italian noble family from Rome, are said to act as a hub for all Illuminati bloodlines. Interestingly, they both possess the Boskop skulls, the elongated ones, that are found among the remains of human progenitors, the same royal class of Egypt that traces its origins to the stars. That is, to extraterrestrials who made colonies on the earth alongside the other humans that were here. That is in their telling, of course. From our earlier studies in Islam, we understand that somehow the second beast is also an Arab leader of the seed of Abraham, but carrying forward an utterly satanic agenda. So this bloodline is going to flow into a person like this. We will also touch on how international laws are being drafted and international courts established, whose combined function is to set up systems in which international law can exercise precedence over local national laws and globalism over nationalism. This transition anticipates an international transition to a global government and the implementation of Agenda 21 and similar programs for infrastructure transformation. Once these changes are implemented and adopted, there are only a few small steps before the New World Order is fully in place, which in its full glory will be revealed to be a Luciferian world government, with a modern Nimrod at its helm. So session 35, New World Order. Let's get underway. The image of the beast is apocalyptically prefigured by Nebuchadnezzar's great human image, which was 60 cubits by 6 cubits in dimension. We can sort of take a few things from the statue and from what Nebuchadnezzar was trying to do. He was looking for a single system of speech and worship. See, all the people from all the nations had to gather in front of this statue, and when the music played, they all had to bow down to it. Now, it didn't matter which nationality they came from. They were conquered by Nebuchadnezzar, in fact, and assimilated into his, let's call it a global empire of the day, and this was the requirement that he made of them. The decree went throughout his empire, and nowadays we would say that equates to an international directive. So there will be an international system which dictates when, where, how, and what men worship. One who refuses is cast into the furnace of affliction and social exclusion. Remember, in the days of Nebuchadnezzar, the 3 Hebrews who wouldn't bow down, and they were taken and thrown into the furnace to be burnt alive. But we take that as an apocalyptic picture, but there is a taking and throwing into a furnace that will occur in our own day, a social furnace, a place of social destruction, as it were. The tools of control today will include international law, state ownership and or control of the media, and international and totalitarian state control of just about everything in our lives. Now, control of the media includes the power of censorship. For instance, the Trans-Pacific Pact, the TPP Pact, of 17th of August 2017 allows large corporate groups to block and monitor YouTube publications which level accusations against it. So some of these corporations reserve the right to censor comments about them. This is part of totalitarian power as well. It's the loss of power. I mean, the Americans enshrine these things in their constitution, but internationally speaking, these rights aren't there. We don't have the complete right to say what we like anymore. Thus, the image of the beast, it represents humanism. Nebuchadnezzar's image was also of a gold-bedecked human being. The image sees us and reports on us. Now, we could say then that it's our own technology that's already able to spy on us and to control us, either through propaganda or through, in a sense, intimidating us into behavior that it wants. We know that at the moment, even in New Zealand, we're being every telephone call and every internet connection is being logged and monitored by law. It's mandated. And even though it's about 2 years now, coming in June 2018, I don't know if they're going to stop doing it. It'd be interesting to see if they do. But there was a 2-year, had to do this for 2 years, and it started about 2 years ago. So they are listening to everything we do and say. That really is an invasion of privacy, but that seems to be what they think they can do. This is the way that the image watches us. But the God this beast and this system worships really is Lucifer. The spirit of Lucifer is mirrored in the humanist desire to cast off all allegiance to an invisible heavenly deity, or of having to believe in a creator, and to that degree it is therefore shameless. It just operates on the basis of expediency to the state, but there is no sense of moral culpability toward God. Now, Harold Wallace Rosenthal said a number of years ago, most Jews do not like to admit it, but our God is Lucifer, and we are his chosen people. Lucifer is very much alive. Now, he was the administrative assistant to Senator Jacob Javits in 1976 when he gave his interview and said this, but notably he was murdered soon afterwards. Now, the Antichrist is a false messiah, a humanist Muslim messiah. It sounds like a curious mix because Muslims are not meant to be irreligious, but it looks like you can be religious and humanist at the same time. And this Antichrist will have a bloodline that really starts right back with Cain. Now, Cain was the one who slew Abel, of course, and from Cain we can see that it flowed through Ham, because that's where the errant seed appeared after the flood. and from Ham to Nimrod, and from Nimrod to Babylon, and eventually the mysteries of Babylon, which were stored at Pergamos, were taken to Rome. This bloodline merges with another that springs from Ishmael and the Arabs, and another from the satanic Khazarian Jews. So we have a convergence of these different streams of almost satanic worship and behavior, and then they start to merge in modern societies until there's a merging of the bloodlines, as it were. All of these have to merge into the one final character, who will, in a sense, represent all of the bloodlines. So he is the Antichrist that represents all the various Antichrists that have appeared in different secret societies around the world. The false Messiah is then the seed of the serpent spoken about in the Genesis text. He's the father of all who shun God's rule. Now, British Israelite belief, British Israel develops a lot of genealogies to support its teaching, and it cashes in on some of this Illuminati lore. Biblical bloodlines matters, as we see from, for instance, the genealogy of Jesus, because it establishes one's right to sit on a throne. Let's say, for instance, Jesus is the identified seed of David through bloodlines, and so he therefore has the right to sit on David's throne. He's also legitimately born of Israel, and Abraham had the promise that one of his seed would be the Messiah, basically. And before that, of course, we have to know that he's seed of Adam. He has to be a human being. He can't have tainted genetics. And so we talked about the giants and the whole program of trying to taint human genetics, and the bloodline of Jesus had to escape that taint. Now, bloodlines are also important to Satanists. The Illuminati are trying to bring together 13, appropriately, bloodlines into the Antichrist. The possibly intact body of Gilgamesh found in 2003, we don't know if it was a body or a skeleton at this stage, but I believe it might have been a body, may even provide DNA for the same bloodline. Now, if some of the bloodlines that came after that time involved the blood of Gilgamesh, then it would still, which I think they do, it would still then be part of the same bloodline, but it would be good to have the original blood, I think, if they could get it.
Incest was practiced by ancient Egyptian royalty. Mothers married sons and brothers married sisters to keep the power and the money all in the family. Like their Quranic ancestors, the British monarchy have a long history of incestuous inbreeding.
away from the presidency is actually a blood relation. He's President Bush's 9th cousin once removed. Cheney's cousin Barack Obama is also Bush's 11th cousin. President Lincoln was President Bush's 7th cousin 5 times removed. And Bush shared more than just a ballot with John Kerry. That's right, they're 9th cousins twice removed. Trace the family tree far enough, and you get Madonna, Celine Dion, and Tom Hanks.
Christine, you've heard the adage politics makes strange bedfellows. Apparently politics also makes for strange relations. Thanks to the New England Historic Genealogical Society, we now know the presidential candidates are related to a host of famous and historic figures.
In this primary campaign.
I opposed this war in 2002.
But do you know their relatives? Obama is distantly related to 6 presidents: George W. and George H.W. Bush, Gerald Ford, Lyndon Johnson, Harry S. Truman, and James Madison. Obama's family tree also includes Sir Winston Churchill and Civil War General Robert E. Lee.
Thank you all. Thank you.
She's also related to beatnik author Jack Kerouac and the wife of Prince Charles of England. John McCain's ancestry was more difficult to trace, but it's known he's the 6th cousin of First Lady Laura Bush.
helped our nation celebrate its bicentennial in 1976. She gave me a look that only a mother could give a child. Gave me a look that only a mother could give a child. Only a mother could give a child. Only a mother could give a child. She gave me a look that only a mother could give a child.
What they call themselves, the Illuminati, which comes from the illuminated ones, have come through history And as people began to reject overt in-your-face dictatorship, they became the people who ran the system. It's all about genetics to these people. They're like horse breeders. Diana basically called herself the Windsor's broodmare, as she was brought into the web merely to be the vehicle to give birth to William. You'll look at the Bushes and people like that, and they look like you and me. The key element is what happens beyond the realm that we can see. This is what the Illuminati bloodlines really are. They are vehicles for other dimensional entities to manipulate this reality. To understand it, you have to research so many different subjects and then fit the strands together before you go, wow, so that's what it's all about. So when you look at the story of Diana, it's not just about what's happening now, what happened in 97. It's also going back again to Babylon, places like that. The goddess Diana was an ancient goddess, which was another name for the Babylonian goddess, Queen Semiramis, the goddess of the Illuminati. And one of the groups of people that worshipped Diana, the goddess, and did their rituals to her, were called the Merovingians. The Merovingians are one of the, if not the, key bloodline in the whole Illuminati network.
Our governments are ruled by the royal bloodlines all across the earth. It's the royal bloodlines, it's the aristocratic bloodlines that have really ruled world politics for hundreds of years. But I'm going to give, names and just evidence for this and information that you can go and research to give more specific information on this revelation. I mean, a lot of people do know this information, but, did you know that all 43 US presidents have carried European royal bloodlines into office? 34 have been genetic descendants from just one person, Charlemagne, the brutal 8th century king of the Franks. 19 of them directly descended from King Edward III of England. In fact, the presidential candidate with the most royal genes has won every single American election as president. This information comes from Burke's Peerage. It's excellent. I'd advise you to go on and read that on Google. That's Burke's Peerage, B-U-R-K-E-S, Peerage, Burke's Peerage, which is really the Bible of aristocratic and royal genealogy. It's based in London, and it reveals, a lot of revelation, but also every presidential election in America, that's since and including George Washington in 1789, even to Bill Clinton and today. The presidents who have won the elections have had the most British and French royal genes. Of the 42 presidents to Clinton, 33 have been related to two people: Alfred the Great, the King of England, and Charlemagne, who, was the most famous monarch of France. And so it goes on. 19 of them are related to England's Edward III, who has 2,000 blood connections to Prince Charles. The same goes with the banking families in America. George Bush and Barbara Bush are from the same bloodline. The Pierce bloodline, that's what it's called, which name is changed from Percy when it crossed the Atlantic. Percy is one of the aristocratic families of Britain to this day. They were involved in the gunpowder plot to blow up Parliament at the time of Guy Fawkes. I'll share more, but really there's other information I'll bring, but the royal bloodlines do control parliaments, politicians, and, that's the truth. They are, you know, connected to royal households through bloodline. That's the presidents, the prime ministers. This is the system of control that has been established. This is the establishment, you know. This is the establishment. Secret is kept hidden, and that's the truth. So it's not just that they are alumni trained, that they go to Jesuit universities, that as these presidents or prime ministers. It's not even just that they're subordinate to Rome or the Vatican, or that even their royal households govern them. It's the fact that they are actually related to the royal households. So this is all one big bloodline controlling the earth. I mean, if America also declared its independence from the European monarchies in 1776, how is it possible that every single president is descended from European monarchs? The answer is because they're family. It's one big family. They keep it in the family. Now, if presidents are democratically elected, as we are told, or, you know, what are the odds that we would always choose members of the British and French royal bloodlines to lead us? If you're American listening to me, you need to ask that question. Why is it every president of your nation is connected to the royal family in Great Britain? That's because the Crown Corporation of London governs the United States. They are nothing but states of the Crown. Still are. That's why every president who has, you know, the bloodline of the British monarchs is put in office. America has always been owned and governed by royal families, the black nobility of Europe, but it's actually the British royal family that governs over America. You can see that when you read its history. It's not the land of the free, as everyone claims it is. People say, you know, anyone can become president. That's deception. That's a lie. It's all one big royal family, folks. That's it. Ruling our nations, ruling our governments. It's the monarchs that rule. And that is the true revelation of the New World Order.
More ominous still is the disclosure that the Soviet KGB archive files present a terrifying portrait of the present German Chancellor as being the daughter of the former German Nazi leader Adolf Hitler. Though said to be born on July the 17th, 1954, in the former Soviet-controlled German Democratic Republic of East Germany, Angela Merkel's GDR file states that she was instead born on April the 20th, 1954, the birth date of her true father, Adolf Hitler, who was born on April the 20th in the year 1889. Now, Angela Merkel's means of birth, as detailed in these documents, was based upon the research of the German Dr. Karl Klauberg. Now, Klauberg, though classified as one of the worst Nazi angel of death doctors and convicted by the Soviet courts as being a war criminal, was nevertheless freed by the Soviets when he was recognized as being the father of artificial insemination. Now, according to these documents, Dr. Klauberg was released by the Soviets after serving only 7 years of sentence in exchange for turning over to the KGB his hidden files on his Nazi artificial insemination experiments, and more horrifically, the frozen sperm of the former Nazi dictator Adolf Hitler. Now, upon the receipt of the Nazi files on artificial insemination, along with Hitler's frozen sperm, the Soviet Politburo authorized the experiments to resurrect, if possible, a child bearing the genetic markers of Adolf Hitler. Now, Dr. Klauberg then brought to communist East Germany Eva Braun's that of course, was Hitler's wife in the final stages, Eva Braun's youngest sister Gretel, to be the surrogate mother for the intended offspring of Hitler using Hitler's frozen sperm. It was reasoned that the combining of the genes between Hitler's sperm and Eva Braun's closest kin, her sister, would produce for the Soviets a near match of what a child of Hitler and Eva Braun would have been should one have been born. I would like to point out at this point that during the latter stages of the Second World War, as the Russians advanced upon Berlin, Hitler and Eva Braun both committed suicide. According to the records, they both took poison, and the people who witnessed this particular scene were given strict instructions to pour petrol over their dead bodies and burn them so they would not be desecrated by the Russians. Now, upon the birth of Angela Merkel in 1954, it was agreed by the Soviets, Americans, and the Vatican that she should be placed under the control of the Catholic Church through its connections with the East German Lutheran Church, with whom she was in fact placed. Dr. Klauberg, after the birth of Hitler's daughter, and upon his return to West Germany, was promptly imprisoned. But within 2 years he was murdered while still in the custody of the West Germans and Americans. In the agreement between the Soviets, the Western powers, and the Vatican, the ascendancy of Hitler's daughter to power could not be achieved until the Vatican also brought to power a German pope. This was accomplished when the former Nazi Joseph Ratzinger became Pope Benedict XVI, and he became Pope, if you recall, on April the 20th, 2005, precisely on the 116th birthday anniversary of Adolf Hitler. Quickly following the Nazi German Pope to European power, Hitler's daughter was elected as the Chancellor of Germany on November the 22nd, 2005. Another significant world globalist anniversary. It was on November the 22nd, 1859, that Charles Darwin launched his Origin of the Species, aimed at severing mankind from the knowledge of his divinely created origin. Today, the daughter of Hitler, Angela Merkel, holding the same office as her father, Chancellor of Germany, is now also the President of the European Union, the EU commonly called, and the head of the powerful Western economic bloc, G8. Could it be that her father's dream of coming into control of the whole of Europe under German Vatican control through war, which has failed on 2 occasions, is now to be accomplished by Hitler's daughter?
In satanic circles, many high-profile marriages are pre-arranged to keep the occult energy, they say, in the blood and as close to the original source as possible. After all, everybody that's in a satanic bloodline, if they marry somebody outside that bloodline, which I suppose they do have to, they can't keep marrying into their own family all the time, there is a risk of the blood being, in a sense, thinned down through other blood. But the occultists have a practice, though, they have had for hundreds of years, of trying to marry in within a small group of families so that the bloodline keeps flowing back in upon itself and keeping pure, as it were, or impure, if you prefer that word, in anticipation of the day when it would emerge in the last age for the final Antichrist, who they believe would be the one bringing in the New World Order. There are other ways to keep bloodlines intertwined. The highest intelligence sources know, for instance, that Queen Elizabeth is the niece of Adolf Hitler, and that Angela Merkel is in fact Hitler's surrogate daughter by artificial insemination of Eva Braun's sister. Adoptions, name changes, and fake deaths hide such facts, just as they disguise the fact that Hillary Clinton apparently started life as Pauline Robertson Bush, who supposedly died of leukemia as a child in the George W. Bush family. Bush, for his part, married the daughter, Barbara, of the famous British Satanist Aleister Crowley, who many labelled as the evilest man in the world. Blood links within Satanist circles tell us that Bush must also have been some kind of a Satanist, and this brings his son and Hillary Clinton into the same fold. Better yet, the big dispute over Obama's birth certificate has become enmeshed in attempts to prove his birth was in Kenya and not Hawaii, deflecting attention from the fact that his birth was, some believe, almost certainly in Indonesia. And most lately, if we're going to follow the QAnon drops, it seems there are connections in his bloodline to families in Pakistan, which may explain why he gave a lot of Pakistanis who came to America and worked in government IT a free pass. He didn't put them through background checks at all in the end, because perhaps he had a very big soft spot for the Pakistani nation. Now, the fake birth certificate identifies his parents as a Kenyan father and an American mother who met supposedly over a common love of communism and who parted company not long after Obama and his brother were born. That's very convenient because it means there doesn't have to be any history of his childhood because his parents had parted and he wasn't with them. This all deflects from the more likely explanation that his grandfather was Michael Rockefeller and his mother was the Indonesian king's daughter. He's also related by blood, apparently, to Nelson Mandela. Now, it does depend whose research you follow, but some of these alternative theories do have pretty strong proof if you follow them up. Stronger, in fact, than the links to, say, Kenya. Now, on another tangent, papal blood was for long periods kept within narrow family lines. Apart from links to rich European families and to European mafia, many of the earliest popes, according to Lauren Moray, derived from Mithra worshipping Iranian blood, and the papal mitre was a carryover from Mithra worship. Even the word mitre traces from the name Mithra. Satanists revel in the depths of their own evil, commending themselves to Satan in the same way as righteousness might commend a saint to God. Child sacrifice is rampant throughout all their ranks, which reach into the royal family of Britain and to the Vatican.
So this is Alexander VI, his predecessor?
I think so, yes.
Because he presided over the conquest of the Americas, essentially, under Christendom, right? The notion that right. He actually issued the papal bull saying the Americas belong to Christ and all the lands basically belong to the Catholic Church.
Right. But these are ancient ruling Iranian bloodlines. Many of the popes were actually Iranian. They're Zoroastrian worshippers. They also worship Mithra. And Mithra is represented by a young man in a kind of a soft felt hat that kind of falls over at the front. And that hat, I started following the signs and symbols because all of a sudden we were into ancient Iranian signs and symbols. And that's when the bloodhound in me really got on the right trail. And I said, well, Confucius always said a very, very long time ago, it's signs and symbols that rule the world, not words and laws. And so then I locked on to the signs and symbols, and that was a helicopter ride. It was a big acceleration of my research and really getting to the right places. And what was so interesting about Castro is that I discovered that, first of all, his father came from Spain, and Castro had been saying, maybe for the last 2 or 3 years, I've heard him saying in the public media that his family are Jewish and that they were conquistadors. But I just thought something was strange in Cuba. That whole victim population that's trapped there, and they're all Jesuits, and Jesuits are an army. They're military. They're for spying. And they're atheists. They don't even believe in God. Dostoevsky and Napoleon, many famous world leaders have even said that about the Jesuits. So I said, well, what are they about? And I discovered the Villa Farnese that Alessandro Farnese started to build when he was Pope Paul III was actually, he started the Jesuits with the Borgias, and they work together a lot, and they are part of what you call the Vatican or the papal nobility, and they intermarry. And I'm going to read a list of them because this is who the Illuminati are. These are the 10 Roman families. They were Roman emperors, and then Vatican and Jesuit are all involved. But they're the Illuminati. So it's the Farnese, Borgia, Colonna, Gaetani, Medici, Pamphili, Orsini, Aldobrandini, Chigi, and Conti.
Greetings, humanity of all over the world. We are anonymous. The shadow forces behind the New World Order are following a slow-paced agenda of total control over mankind and our planet's resources. David Icke coined it the totalitarian tiptoe, because they are making very small steps towards our complete and definitive enslavement. As a result, the masses remain relatively unaware of the fact that their liberties are being gradually taken away, while the power of the New World Order octopus grows steadily. Somewhere near the very top of the pyramid, an extremely elitist organization known as the Council of the 13 Families orchestrates all of the major world events. As the name suggests, the council consists of the top 13 most influential families on Earth. An increasingly number of people is becoming aware that 99% of the Earth's population is controlled by an elite of 1%, but the Council of the 13 Families consists of less than 1% of the 1% elite, and nobody on Earth can apply for membership. In their opinion, they are entitled to rule over the rest of us, because they believe that they are the direct descendants of the ancient gods, and consider themselves royal. These families are 1. Rothschild, Bauer, or Bauer. 2. Bruce. 3. Cavendish, Kennedy. 4. De Medici. 5. Hanover. 6. Habsburg. 7. Krupp. 8. Plantagenet. 9. Rockefeller. 10. Romanov. 11. Sinclair, St. Clair. 12. Warburg, Del Banco. 13. Windsor, Saxe-Coburg-Gotha. Personally, I suspect that this may not be the complete list, and some very powerful lineages are still unknown to us. The Rothschild dynasty is unquestionably the most powerful, visible bloodline on Earth, and their estimated wealth is around $500 trillion. They exercise their power through the world banking empire, which is almost entirely owned by them. The most important institutions that work hard to establish the New World Order and completely enslave our species are 1. The City of London, finance, controlled by the Rothschilds, not part of the United Kingdom. 2. The United States Federal Reserve, finance, private bank, owned by the Rothschilds, not part of the United States. 3. The Vatican City, indoctrination, deception and scare tactics, not part of Italy. 4. Washington, D.C., military, mind programming, brainwashing and depopulation, not part of the United States. All of the above institutions function as individual states, operating under their own laws. Hence, there is no court of law on earth that could ever prosecute them. The multitude of secret societies in existence today operate as branches of a mega corporation, which is owned by the Council of the 13 Families.
The entire government system would have to be gutted. Why? Because it's set up to provide elite ritual abusers with victims. That's what it's set up to do. Sorry if you don't like that, but that's what government is set up to do. It's set up for the survival of beings who feed on other beings being supplied to them by patsies. Okay, let's look at a report that came out in Neon Metal 2 days ago. CIA agent blows the whistle. We supply elite pedophiles with children. John Kuriako exposes the agency for procuring child sex slaves for pedophile ring. A decorated 14-year veteran CIA agent has blown the whistle and made a public statement to expose the Central Intelligence Agency for operating a child trafficking ring that procures children for global elite pedophiles. Former spy John Kuriako, who also has deep ties to Hollywood from working as an advisor to the movie business, has revealed how the agency provides child sex slaves to powerful oligarchs in the entertainment industry, Washington, D.C., and beyond. Let's take a look at a video where he's sharing about this.
So he's been vetted and he's really great. So you're in this hotel room and you're meeting with him. And at the start of the meeting he says, listen, before we meet, I want to tell you, I've given you everything. I've told you everything that's been true. You saved American lives. Now you're going to do something for me. You're going to go out and you're going to get me a prostitute right now or I'm never cooperating with you again. So I want to see a show of hands. How many people would get him the prostitute? Some, not many. The answer is sure. I mean, you know, he's a scumbag, of course, but your job is to deal with scumbags, and you would be expected to go out and get him the prostitute. What if he asks for a child prostitute? Absolutely not, under any circumstances. But that's not the CIA talking, that's John Kuriako talking. Because there's no rule. Your job as a CIA case officer is to break the laws of the country that you're serving in. That's your job. Your job is to commit espionage, which in most countries is a death penalty crime. Your job is to convince people to commit treason for you because they like you so much, or they like the money that you're giving them so much. So, because it's the nature of your job to break the law, there are no rules that are written for you to carry out that job. Now the problem there is that most CIA case officers would procure the child prostitute. And even if they felt funny about it, they would be told by headquarters, you have a job to do. This is a bona fide source here. Go do your job. That's the problem, or the nature of the problem, of ethics and intelligence operations. There are no ethics in intelligence operations. I've come to the conclusion, after all these years, that there probably doesn't need to be a CIA.
Okay, so is that alarming or what? Are you a little alarmed by that? Of course, they're gonna okay the release of this JFK stuff. There aren't that many people alive who were involved in that who can be called to account for that. So yeah, let's release the JFK stuff to get the attention off of this guy who's telling us what's really going on in the CIA. Like I shared with you in my last video, this is not about Russian collusion. This isn't even really about power. This is about the survival of beings who prey on other beings, who prey on people, who prey on humans, and the survival of those who have been supplying them with such, who don't want to be found out. That's where we're at right now. I wanted to show you this worldwide clandestine web of Masonic Illuminati pedophile networks. Take a look at this. Government child abuse by design, how it works. The administrators, non-Masonic members of public services, the common man, in total ignorance of the secret society's pedophile agenda. Those are who's carrying this out. Then we have the gatekeepers, the low-level secret society masons. That's first degree, second degree, third degree, in total ignorance of their hierarchy's pedophile agenda, supposedly doing good work in the community. And then we have the Brotherhood Alliance. What in the world is the Brotherhood Alliance? It sounds like some kind of childish, treehouse gang, doesn't it? These are high-level, fourth through 33rd degree secret society masons, compartmentalized on a need-to-know basis. Some compartments may be unaware of the pedophile agenda, and some are fully involved. Clandestine operations executed by lower levels via being controlled by higher levels. Okay? And then we have the child abuse by design, the elite hierarchy of Freemasons, secret society network. Police and military intelligence black operations control the design. Police, listen to this, police and military intelligence black operations control the design, implementation, and cover-ups of all levels of their child abuse networks and pedophile rings, destroying family unity via the family courts to take control and possession of children. Masonic infiltration of child care facilities to groom and procure victims for their pedophile rings, kidnapping children via corrupt legislation for ritual sexual abuse, torture, and murder, kidnapping children via corrupt legislation for the ritual sexual abuse, torture, and murder in their Masonic, satanic, black occult rituals. This is the web of black operations within the government that link secret societies and pedophile rings together. This is what we're dealing with, folks. Now, an article also came out on the 28th on Scott.net entitled Former Qatari PM Publicly Admits to Collusion Coordination Between 4 Countries Led by the U.S. to Destabilize Syria and Support Terrorists. Why? To procure children. In my opinion, Qatar is one of the runs one of the biggest child and human trafficking rings in the world. That's where it all happens. This was posted in Zero Hedge, Saturday, October 28th. In a television interview of a top Qatari official confessing the truth behind the origins of the war in Syria is going viral across Arabic social media during the same week. A leaked top-secret NSA document was published, which confirms that the armed opposition in Syria was under the direct command of foreign governments from the early years of the conflict. According to a well-known Syria analyst and economic advisor with close contacts in the Syrian government, the explosive interview constitutes a high-level public admission to collusion and coordination between 4 countries to destabilize an independent state, including possible support for Nusra al-Qaeda. Importantly, this admission will help build case for what Damascus sees as an attack on its security and sovereignty. It will form the basis for compensation claims. I'm going to skip the next paragraph and continue. This process of clarity has been aided, as predicted, by the continued infighting among Gulf Cooperation Council, the GCC, former allies Saudi Arabia and Qatar, with each accusing the other side of funding Islamic State and al-Qaeda terrorists. Ironically, both true. Increasingly, the world watches as more dirty laundry is aired and the GCC implodes after years of nearly all the Gulf monarchies funding jihadist movements in places like Syria, Iraq, and Libya. The top Qatari official is no less than former Prime Minister Hamad bin Jassim bin Jabir al Thani, who oversaw Syria operations on behalf of Qatar until 2013, also as foreign minister, and is seen below with then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton in this January 2010 photo. In an interview with Qatari TV Wednesday, bin Jaber Al Thani revealed that his country, alongside Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and the United States, began shipping weapons to jihadists from the very moment events first started in 2011. And I'll put a link to this article below the video so that you can finish that on your own. So do you really think there's going to be some high-level military official who's going to, risk his life and limb calling all this out on behalf of the people? Do you really think that Joseph Dunford is going to do that? Come on. Do you really think there's a good military who's going to bring in the new republic, and then the new republic is going to be any different? The new republic will be in name only. It'll be a government control system, of course, where you can have a government mommy and daddy tell you what to do, and you won't have to think for yourself. Is that what you want? Is that what you want?
High-level politicians arrested in huge pedophile sting. Posted on July 7, 2017. A global pedophile network on the dark web has been shut down, resulting in thousands arrested, including high-level politicians, entertainers, white-collar professionals and high-ranking clergy members, according to several sources. German prosecutors said Thursday, July 6, that they had shut down a major platform used by elite pedophiles for organizing the sexual abuse of children, which led to the arrest of its suspected ringleader and senior members of the pedophile community in Germany and abroad. The sting, dubbed Operation Elysium, was launched on the eve of the G20 in Hamburg, throwing the global summit into disarray after key members of at least 2 European delegations were held by police, according to your Newswire. Prosecutors released a statement saying Elysium was used for global exchanges of child pornography by its members and to arrange meetings to sexually abuse children. Further arrests have been made globally following the initial raid, in a joint effort involving international law enforcement agencies. According to Neon et al., there were over 87,000 members trading images and videos of the most serious sexual abuse of children, including babies, and representations of sexual violence against children. The Elysium platform, built as a forum, has existed since the end of 2016, and was only accessible via the so-called Darknet, Frankfurt Public Prosecutor's Office and BKA Federal Police said in a statement, according to Reuters, who is also reporting the arrests. Police have arrested several users of the website, mainly in Germany and Austria, the police statement said. RT reports the unidentified man who was the site's suspected operator was arrested on June 12, when police raided his apartment, seizing the server used to host the site. He has been sentenced to 30 years. This latest bust comes just 2 months after nearly 900 members of a global dark web pedophile ring spanning Europe and the Americas were arrested following a 2-year investigation by the FBI and Europol, also reported by RT. The suspect is believed to have been largely responsible for the creation of the technical infrastructure of the platform as its administrator, prosecutors said, adding that they had found the server used to store the site's data on the so-called Darknet during a search of his flat. Investigators are currently sifting through the data retrieved in the raids, in hopes that the information could lead to thousands more arrests worldwide, as reported by Neon et al. Authorities have not divulged exactly how many suspects have been arrested. More details will be made available in a press conference today. As the Free Thought Project points out, surprisingly, The network of nearly 90,000 individuals is not even the largest bust in history. Another online darknet pedophile platform called Playpen was dismantled earlier this year, and 58-year-old American Stephen Chase was sentenced to 30 years in federal prison. Chase was held responsible for the existence of Playpen, a child pornography network established in 2014, which had 150,000 active pedophiles on the site.
What's called a rebel, if you don't say yes sir and go along with the plan, you're done away with. And that's why there are guillotines on every street corner.
Revelation 20, verse 4 says, "And I saw thrones, and they sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them, and I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Jesus and for the word of God, and which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither had received his mark upon their foreheads or in their hands. And they lived and reigned with Christ 1,000 years." You know, as we see in Revelation 20, the prophecy clearly declares that some of the children of God that do not go along with the papacy's mark will find themselves at the business end of a guillotine.
For thousands of years, these families have practiced inbreeding between sisters and brothers, uncles and nieces, mothers and sons, to keep the power and wealth all in the family. This practice of inbreeding over thousands of years has produced a clever but pathological breed of conscienceless, sociopathic families who will stop at nothing to own every ounce of gold, every drop of water, and every blade of grass on planet Earth. The United Nations, which they founded and control, has clearly stated its goals of establishing a new world order, a UN standing army, and a global taxation system. The Queen's husband, Prince Philip, and Evelyn Rothschild have already established an interfaith declaration for the creation of one world religion. What would life be like in this world empire with one world religion, one world army, one world economy, one world court, one world media, one world government, and one world dictator? What the public doesn't know is that Karl Marx's Communist Manifesto and the Russian Constitution have been built into the UN Charter.
What are your memories of conducting the rituals for the royal family? What happened? What were they doing?
One thing that sticks out in my mind is that there was before this was back in the late 70s. This was before Charles was married to Diana. He was involved with Kamala Parker Bowles, and she does not shapeshift, but she became pregnant by Charles, and she produced a baby, and this baby was presented at the ritual and killed, and that is the price, the firstborn between these two, and eventually these two will marry. that is the price that is to be paid, the sacrifice of the firstborn between a union.
Where do the rituals take place that you've been involved in, involving the British royal family?
Glamis Castle, Stonehenge, Balmoral Castle. I have reason to believe there's a church, and I think it may be Westminster Abbey. And there is a Mothers of Darkness castle or chateau in Brussels, Belgium. They've been there too. And also in France, the Marquis de Libero Pindar has a castle in the Alsace-Lorraine region of France, and I believe it's in the Alsace region that he uses, and there are certain rituals done at that castle down in the dungeon part of that castle. Entrance down there to underground places in the earth, and there is a natural formation of rocks that kind of glow green, and they keep menstrual blood in that formation, and this green glowing from these rocks actually turns the blood a darker color, and it's called black blood, and it's used in certain rituals. But there are also, they keep small, there are smaller, less developed little reptilians that are kept down there. They're kind of pets. But one other thing that's also down there, there are eggs. It's like a nest of eggs kept down in that part where it's warm. It's very warm down there into this entrance, and these eggs are kept down there incubating, and they are the reptiles' eggs. And the Queen Mother, all I could pick up was that for some reason that there was a malevolence towards Diana, and Diana I had never seen at a ritual. I wondered what she knew about all of this.
What have you seen the royal family do, the Queen Mother, and the other people you've seen in the rituals? What have you seen them do?
I've seen all of them drink human blood and consume human flesh, and they have their own goblets in which they have blood, and these goblets are encrusted with jewels, and they also have their own daggers, and that the dagger goes into the goblet, and they stir the blood around with it, and it's also what it is, it's a symbol of the phallus going into the vagina when they're doing this. And I've seen them do this, and some of them have even, like the Queen Mother I saw with, she had her own little, it would, like almost, it's between a very elaborate ornate chair or a throne kind of thing brought in for her to sit. And because before these rituals actually start, there is a kind of people move around the room and talk, or recognize one another. It's a formal kind of a ritualistic setup, the way they talk and the way they introduce each other. It's like a court.
What are they wearing?
They're wearing robes. They're not wearing anything underneath the robes, and the robes are very ornate. They all have, the one thing in common they have is they have a red color like blood, and some of them have purple, and they have gold kinds of lines running through them. They have the Merovingian symbol of France, the fleur-de-lis, and there are jewels that are sewn in at certain points on these robes, and they wear these robes, but they don't wear anything underneath the robes, because what is going to happen, what the rituals are all about, they're going to shapeshift, and they can't have anything on under the robes. And there are orgy kind of things that go on at the rituals also. And
involving the royal family of Britain?
Yes, involving the royal family of Britain, and the sacrifice and the eating of, consuming the sacrifice, and they are involved in that.
You've seen them do that?
Yes, I have seen them do that.
People in Britain, listening to what you're saying, would obviously be staggered, I guess anywhere in the world, but what would stagger them mostly is, in Britain, the Queen Mother has an image of being the nation's grandmother, the nice old lady, and good old Queen Mum, what a lovely lady. What's your experience of the Queen Mother?
She is very cold in reality, and she is very cruel, and she is very different than she comes across to the public. She's cold-blooded. If she feels that you are someone beneath her, even in the Illuminati, that you're at her equal or your station is above her, she will not speak to you. She will not recognize you. She obviously, from what I see, enjoys consuming human flesh. It's sickening.
Can we start with the United States?
Yes, I have seen at rituals, I have seen George Bush, I have seen Madeleine Albright, I have seen Henry Kissinger, I have seen Ronald Reagan, and I have also, by the way, seen his wife, Nancy Reagan. I have seen Hillary Clinton before I knew she was Hillary Clinton. At the time, at these rituals, she is involved. The other people that I have named and are, as I have seen shapeshift into reptilians. I have not seen Hillary Clinton actually shapeshift, but she is involved. I have seen the two sons when they were young, the two sons of George Bush present at these rituals.
Are these the sons that have become governors?
Yes, one is in Florida and one is in Texas. I have seen, did I mention Jay Rockefeller? And he shapeshifts. I've seen George Deukmejian and Ronald Reagan again have.
Satan would like to hide the family history of the final great Antichrist until it is time to present the credentials of Satan's foul seed in the last days. But evidently the goal is to bring together 13 bloodlines in the person of the Antichrist. More than half of these bloodlines are found in Europe's old families, much as each president of the United States seems to have the blood of King John Plantagenet of England flowing in his veins. There's a book by J.R. Church, Daniel Reveals the Bloodline of the Antichrist, which may be of interest to some here. This black nobility is influential in establishing popes and governments. They own and run the Vatican. And this black nobility, by the way, is this group of old families that have a lot to do with appointing rulers and popes in Europe. So they own and run the Vatican, the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, the Knights of Columbus, and La Cosa Nostra, which is the Italian mafia, as we know. European monarchies like the British Crown are branches of Rome, and they manage secret societies like the Freemasons, who infiltrate government agencies and run corporations for the monarchs. The German Fürstenberg family run the Royal Order of Jesters, and the Barons of Strange run the Oddfellow Order. The Sovereign Military Order of Malta is the top military council, and it works closely with the Orders of St. John, run by Protestant monarchs. The Knights of Malta are the main engineers of war. The royal and noble bloodlines are all working together as a global crime syndicate and as part of the modernized Roman Empire. The Greek royal house of Glucksburg run the Greek fraternities and sororities and use initiates as their agents. Indeed, the Glucksburg family ruled Denmark and Norway, and until recently also ruled over Greece. Former Greek nobility like the Mavrolion, Onassis and Niarchos families have a monopoly on the shipping industry and work closely with the British peers. Royal connections to the Illuminati go right back to its foundation. When Adam Weishaupt got thrown out of the Ingolstadt University and out of Austria, he was settled in a new country and got a new job through the agency of the Saxe-Coburg family. Well, many will know that the British House of Windsor is an adopted name. The Queen's true lineage is the family Saxe-Coburg-Gotha. The Crown is certainly involved in Freemasonry, which comes with a certain amount of blood ritual, but keeps the Illuminati at a safe political arm's length. They know that a stated aim of the Illuminati is overthrow of all monarchies, unless of course that monarchy is sympathetic to the Illuminati vision. The British Crown, for its part, controls the British Freemasonic lodges. From England, it authorises and controls universities like Yale and Harvard, and also uses them for recruiting Crown agents through American fraternal orders like the Skull and Bones. And we know that the Bushes were, of course, members of this Skull and Bones society. The royal and noble families also do covert business at the City of London Corporation, which dominates the global markets, and some top London merchant families include the Goldsmith, Stewart, Rothschild, Barclay, Montague, Bailey, and Guinness families. The Orange-Nassau family are the powerful merchants through their Netherlands Trading Society, and the Nassau-Weilburg family of Luxembourg are international bankers connected to the World Bank and the IMF. That's the International Monetary Fund. The Jesuits are Roman intelligence and infiltrators, and use their universities for recruiting and training Vatican agents. Many Knights of Columbus are police officers, mayors, lawyers, and judges, and they protect the Italian mafia while targeting free-thinking people. The Italian mafia are enforcers for Rome, involved in extortion, money laundering, murder, and drug trafficking, and they pay their dues back to the Sicilian mafia, which in turn pays dues back to the black nobility. Court Jews like the Rothschild, Walton, Wallenberg, Warburg, and Dreyfus families serve the Roman Curia in royal courtrooms like Buckingham Palace and Stockholm Palace. The French House of Bonaparte and the Swedish House of Bernadotte control many major European corporations through their Knights of the Order of Seraphim and Legion of Honor, which run the European Round Table of Industrialists. The Holy See is the all-seeing eye and operates as an intelligence network. We see here the eye doesn't just mean the eye of Horus, trying to fulfill the vision of the Illuminati and of the ancient secret societies to bring in a new world order, but it also speaks of the modern intelligence services, which are able to look at all that you do through all their different methods. The eye is certainly a very appropriate symbol. So the Holy See is the all-seeing eye and operates as an intelligence network. The Latin phrase Novus Ordo Seclorum means new order of the ages, or if you like, new secular order, and is on the US dollar bill and the United States Great Seal. The Vatican still uses Latin as its official language and for its documents. It is also incidentally the company Novus Ordo Seclorum Incorporated that owned and provided the voting machines during the 2016 US presidential election, which software hacks were able to manipulate to favor the Democrats. Unfortunately, they didn't bias them enough to overcome Trump, who still managed to beat the odds, much to their chagrin, I'm sure. Now, the black nobility and other royal families have been concealing trillions of dollars in private banks in Luxembourg, Liechtenstein, and Switzerland. The royal families of Luxembourg and Liechtenstein own and run their own national and private banks. The Esther and Lorraine families are top Swiss bankers. And the Swiss Guard are those that protect the Vatican. Those are the ones with the blue and yellow stripes. The Swiss cantons have been in contract with the Vatican for centuries, and Switzerland is basically a papal state. The Italian Savoy and Austrian Habsburg families oversee Switzerland for the black nobility. And basically, these countries, Austria and Italy, all border on Switzerland, so it's almost like they just have to cross borders to do their work. There's no separation between these countries. So it's a natural alliance, really. Now, some of the top bloodlines of the black nobility include the Pallavicini, Colonna, Rospoli, Aldobrandini, Sforza Cesarini, Odescalchi, Doria Pamphili, Giustiniani, Tolonia, Borghese, Gaetani, and Massimo families. Prince Carlo Massimo and Duke Leopoldo Tolonia are overseeing the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, and they have a hidden operation at Jesuit Georgetown, which runs the Department of Defense, along with British Crown agents. And we're speaking here about America. Prince Carlo Massimo is the president of the Italian Association for the Order of Malta, and is the one giving the orders. Queen Elizabeth II is still technically the Queen of Malta. Prince Carlo of Bourbon-Two Sicilies is a top manager of the Society of Jesus, which is the Jesuits. The Jesuits, as I said before, are Roman intelligence and are infiltrators serving the black nobility, authorized by the Farnese family's Pope Paul III. The Bourbon-Two Sicilies family are the continuation of the Farnese family, and Phanisius is engraved still on the Jesuits' headquarters called the Jesuit Church of Rome. The Italian Torlonia family own the Kansas City crime family and share ownership over the Pittsburgh crime family with the Borghese family. You see here all this European, particularly Italian influence over cities in America. The French House of Orleans oversee the New Orleans crime family, again in America, and the French-British Beaufort family oversee the Dixie Mafia, again in America. The Sforza family own the Stidda Mafia clans, which operate in their former territory of Milan. The Colonna family are running the Knights of Columbus and Colombo crime family, as well as the Chicago outfit. The Massimo and Gaetani families own and run the Gambino and Philadelphia crime families. The Massimo family also owns and runs the Casamanica Mafia clan, also called the Roman Mafia, along with the Nuclei Armati Rivoluzionari, which still exists. The Massimo family of Roccasecca own the Clerkenwell Mafia of London. The Greco-Roman Giustiniani family run the Philly Greek mob. And so you see that all of these mafias run by European secret societies are basically very powerful players in even American society. Lots of dirty money there as well. And a great way for people who want to make money for black projects by selling drugs. It's a great way for them to distribute their drugs into the American society. It's a great society that society has really been sabotaging itself terribly. The European Union is based on the Treaty of Rome, and that treaty was signed in Rome at Capitoline Hill. The president of the European Central Bank is Mario Draghi, and he was born in Rome as well and was Jesuit educated at the Massimo Institute. The Boncompagni Ludovici family run the Casalesi Mafia clan, which operates in their former dukedoms and also controls the Bonanno crime family. The Adragna family of Sicily run many of the 'Ndrangheta factions, along with the Gaetani family, and the House of 'Ndrangheta are part owners of the Los Angeles crime family, which was built up by Dragna crime bosses like Jack Dragna. The Odescalchi family, and notice that more and more Italian families here, run the Detroit Partnership and some Slavic mafias. And the Slavic mafias are not just Russian, but they include people that might have been, for instance, in Bulgaria or Czechoslovakia originally, the countries that were from the old Russia before 1986. The House of Savoy owns and runs the Genovese crime family, and Don Vito Genovese was from Naples, and Prince Vittorio Emmanuel IV of Savoy is also the Prince of Naples. So there's definitely a link there. The Chigi Albani family run most of the Albanian mafia, like the Rudaj organization. The Corsini, Medici, and Bonaparte families are the owners of the Union Corsa, or Corsican Mafia. The House of Windsor and German nobility are the Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, Hohenzollern, Hesse, Fürstenberg, and Hanover families, and these run and finance various neo-Nazi cults and Nazi propaganda, while they also control many of the Jewish banking families through their royal courts. The Windsor and German noble families also run the Aryan Brotherhood, and this in a way is why Hitler didn't see Britain as his enemy, but as he saw the British as his brothers, in fact, because of this connection with the Aryan roots and the Aryan Brotherhood. The Windsor and Bush families control covert paramilitary organizations and mercenary armies, branched off from the mainline military forces. In fact, the Bush family is the main stakeholder in the military-industrial complex in the United States, and Vannevar Bush founded Raytheon, while Wesley G. Bush runs Northrop Grumman, two very big complexes in America. The modern Islamic royal families were appointed by European royalty in the 19th and 20th centuries. They weren't self-appointed at all, and especially after World War I, Middle Eastern royalty runs the oil industry and uses their massive wealth to finance globalist agendas, as well as Islamic ones, but this is in exchange for being allowed to rule their own nations. The House of Bourbon and the Spanish nobility, like the Osorio, the Fitzjames, and the Aragon families, run most of the Mexican and South American drug cartels. The House of Bourbon are the founders and owners of Santander Bank. And the King of Spain holds the official claim to being the King of Jerusalem. So it's quite a network and many layers, and very, very hard, I would imagine, to overthrow. But it could be done if key players were taken out in a certain way. So I don't know how far the Trump government's going to go with its purge in America, because it may take it overseas to any one of these families. And certainly there are many mafias already in America that they would have to tackle, and these all go back to European families as well.
De momento solo queda esperar para conocer de qué se trata. Como nota personal, esperamos que no se trate de una broma. Espere, creo que efectivamente es así.
Bonjour. Hola. Ni hao. Hello. Obviously you have two burning questions. Who am I? And who put me in charge? No doubt you're concerned about my accent, skin color, age, beliefs. Half you probably wish I was a woman. So, let me put you at ease. I'm not in charge. You are. I have no authority over you or anyone else. On the contrary, you have authority over me. Think of me as a spokesperson for all the people of the world, controlled by you through social media. Before we get into how that works, let's take a look at this map. Now, this is us. A bunch of lines, divisions, boundaries, countries competing for limited resources, economic domination, religious superiority. Competition is healthy when it comes to cricket or Facebook travel pictures, but this is just stupid. Let's zoom out and get another perspective. To scale, our solar system is a grain of sand in the Sahara Desert, and this little pixel is our only home. Yet we're sucking up resources like there's no tomorrow, breeding like rabbits, strangulating other species out of existence. Plastic waste in the ocean is growing larger than most countries, with nothing in place to stop it. Industries that are harming our planet are so powerful they can prevent or slow down cleaner technology for the sake of short-term profit. Governments, justice systems, the media are all influenced by self-interest groups whose actions often conflict with the well-being of humankind. Obviously, the world is full of a lot of good people, but as a whole, we're contributing to a system that's broken. We're going down a bad path. So, how do we fix it? Together, through social media, we can influence world leaders and industries to start improving the world as opposed to ruining it. We know this will work because history has repeatedly shown us that leaders and industries must follow public opinion or they fail. Sharing this video, endorsing it, tweeting it, goes a long way toward the creation of a legitimate global democracy. Because the more people unite in one place, the more powerful their voice becomes. If you want to have a direct say in how the world is run, visit globaldemocracy.com. That's where I go to understand what it is you need and want. It's here that you can vote on or propose new ideas that will help the world run better, the most popular of which I will present to the world in videos like this one. Please leave your questions and your comments on my YouTube or Facebook pages, and I will respond. Thanks for listening.
Hey everybody, I'm Christopher Green. You're tuning into AMTV, Alternative Media Television. So this is everything that you need to know about the New World Order over the next couple of months. Now, first off, you're not in control. They are. This has all been pre-planned, orchestrated, and these are manufactured events currently taking place. Whether or not we're looking at the onset of the Second American Revolution, with this Cliven Bundy revolt, something fantastic to see, liberty-minded individuals, people, groups, humanity in general, was very excited to see that transpire here in the United States, where literal cowboys, true Americans and patriots showed up with their guns and said, we're not going to take it anymore. And you're not going to take Cliven Bundy's land, his access to public state land, something that he has grandfather rights to over hundreds and hundreds of years, dating back to his Mormon roots and ancestry. All of this, though, is tied in to the New World agenda. Again, they're test marketing. These are test campaigns launched by the NSA and the gross Orwellian surveillance system in order to measure not only what the response will be to these types of events, but who are the key players, not just within the mainstream media, but the alternative media and civilians and militia groups alike. Again, Cliven Bundy, and I think one of the reasons people identified with him so well is because he represents such a broad brushstroke of what America is in the minds of so many people. Again, the West and the God-loving, liberty fighting American people that risked everything for their freedom, for this individual life path and this truth that many of us have been able to live in the United States up till now. But now we're living in this gross Orwellian police state where literally an oligarchy of players at the top of not just the Federal Reserve and the money printing business, but global politics at large, these groups, the World Bank, the United Nations, the IMF, our politicians here in the United States literally run an oligarchy. I mean, this isn't a democracy. In fact, there was a study done on it recently that proved the point. This isn't a democracy. This isn't a country ruled by the interests of the people. No, it's a group of supreme beings that rule over the land like kings and queens over the rest of the peasants. Again, nothing has changed in thousands and thousands of years. Only the perception has. And that's why these aristocrats have been able to pull the wool over your eyes, so to speak, and really sell you on the biggest con job in the history of the world, in the history of America. Many Americans think they're free when they're really not. People like Senator Harry Reid, who was grossly connected, this all came out in the skirmish over the weekend, grossly connected to the Cliven Bundy confiscation plan, this anti-constitutional act to steal cattle and to steal personal property and land from a sovereign state. All of this a part of Harry Reid's game plan to pocket the pocketbooks of his family members that are grossly entrenched in big business, not just with the Chinese and the installation of solar panels, but all kinds of multi-billion-dollar industry. This is what America is today. So we have all this happening in the United States. We have this armed rebellion that literally took place a few days ago that could have and could very likely still be the catalyst for the Second American Revolution here in the United States. But we also have all these global interconnected events happening right now. Russia allegedly did a flyby, I think it's crafted and pretty much orchestrated by the United States, says that Russia put a fighter jet and did a flyby on a U.S. warship a couple of days ago. They're always positioning Russia and Vladimir Putin like they're this aggressor nation, when it's almost comedic in its reality and its truth. The United States, the clear-cut aggressor in this case, whether or not, I cite countless examples in the Middle East, Libya, Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, the list goes on, or it's in Ukraine. Again, all of this interconnected in this web that is really connected at the top of the pyramid through the Federal Reserve System. Some of you might want to call that the Illuminati, these key power brokers, these power players, the oligarchy. Even people like Harry Reid have bosses. Everybody has a boss. And the biggest boss, his boss, in my opinion, is the big man upstairs, the big woman upstairs, whatever you may believe in. But all this interconnected. And what I believe is happening is the United States and the global leadership in general, the New World Order, is preparing for war. They've been preparing for a global conflict for some time. They need to cleanse themselves so that they can profit from the war machine that really is the United States, that is Europe, but really is even bigger than that, is the banking cartel itself. This oligarchy of key players that, again, make money and profit from both nations fighting and profit from a global conflict. Again, they're always funding and financing both sides of the war. And all of this is reaching a boiling point in the United States and around the world globally as we see the Eurozone and the United States both systemically fester from the inside out. This systemically rotten system that literally has been propped up by 0% interest rates, funny money, and artificial stimulus for far too long. Of course they know all of this is going to come to an abrupt end. It's been a part of the plan from the very beginning. Again, while they've been padding their pockets and getting rich, accepting and demanding by force trillion-dollar bailouts and this free money at the Federal Reserve open window, so these major hedge funds and institutional investors and the global elite that have access to this kind of thing can make even more money while they're stripping it from you, the slave, who lives in the illusion, not maybe you tuning in, but millions of people around the world that live in that illusion that they're free when they're really not. They're the common serf or the common peasant. They just have the illusion of freedom. They have the illusion of comfort and safety. Again, people really don't prefer liberty at all. What they do is they prefer consistency, routine, and safety over liberty. Most people are very fearful and want to be controlled. It's in their nature. But all of this reaching a boiling point, and I think, you know, when the financial markets finally do collapse a second time, because they just did in 2008, not too long ago. I mean, millions of people lost everything and are still living through the repercussions of that now. Again, this wasn't a long time ago. This was just a few years ago. And now we're in another Ponzi scheme. But when it hits the next head, I think that the misconception is a lot of people really believe, even a lot of the elites on Wall Street, maybe not at the top of the New World Order, but a lot of these elites really think that this market is somehow a managed market, that somehow it's being controlled, which it is. But I think that the point a lot of people aren't seeing is it's going to reach a boiling point. It's going to reach a cataclysm and an event and a shock where it will be grossly mismanaged. And even the elites themselves will lose control. I don't even know if they know the exact date or day or time that that will happen. All I know is they know that they're pushing this to the edge of the cliff. And when it falls, they have all their chess pieces in place. They have all their players in motion, all of their politicians bought and paid for, all of their FEMA camps ready, all of your constitutional rights stripped. They have the Orwellian surveillance state already implemented, all of this gross technology being used to control you, and they're ready. They're not only ready, but they're just waiting. And when the time comes that, you know, a suitcase bomb goes off in American or European city, God forbid, or the financial markets collapse overnight again, just like they did a few years ago, most people, unfortunately, the great vast majority, will be the ones to suffer the consequences. Not just economically, but physically, spiritually, really on all levels. And the global elite, once again, will pass that hot potato to you, the working class, the common peasant, and the common serf, while they sail off into the sunset, which is what they continually do throughout history, time and time again. Again, all these great wars, World War I, World War II, the World War III, I believe we're already in. We just haven't acknowledged yet, kind of like Vietnam. It took, 10 years for us to acknowledge we were really in a war. We're in the global conflict now. We're in the war, folks. That's the hardcore reality of the way things are. But they need these wars and they need these global confrontations. They need a conflict to, again, reset the system. Again, it's all for their benefit, not yours. They'll expense millions of people's lives. Millions of people will starve like they currently are now as a result of Federal Reserve policies and 0% interest rates, sending commodity prices skyrocketing in a lot of places around the world, places like Africa. You wonder why the kids are starving? It's because of the Federal Reserve policies here in the States. That's why. Because it doesn't benefit, this funny money doesn't benefit any other nation but the U.S. and the global elite themselves. A very small minority, again, that have engineered, manufactured, and have presented these series of events to you, the public, for a reason. Again, all of this a part of a much larger spiritual battle, good versus evil. And believe me, folks, we're at war. You know, whether or not you look at the blood moon and the solar eclipse, the moon eclipses, and all this mumbo jumbo that's happening right now, all of this is a part of a much larger picture, a much more dangerous landscape of war, of criminal intent, with really a fundamental motive and driver to profit from your demise, to profit and to capitalize on your ruin. All totalitarian governments, leadership, rulers, all have the same agenda. And it's a selfish, self-focused, self-involved, narcissistic agenda. And that's exactly what the New World Order is. And these are some of the things that I've been looking at and that you should be paying very close attention to over the next coming months. Not just war, but our financial system and this growing unrest that has been manifesting itself over the past few years and is now spawning. And we're seeing this catalyze in movements and in response from the American people, events like the Cliven Bundy event that is garnering and awakening even more people